In our headlines on this Thursday, March 13th, here in South Korea, the impeachments of 4 public officials, including 3 prosecutors, unilaterally passed by the opposition-led parliament, are rejected by the Constitutional Court, while its verdict on the president's fate is pending. Meanwhile, Seoul sends another delegation for tariff talks with U.S. officials as the Trump administration's 25% tariffs on steel and aluminium imports go into effect as of Wednesday. And efforts to ensure a 30-day truce between Ukraine and Russia continue, with U.S. officials now seeking active interaction with their counterparts at the Kremlin following Kyiv's willingness to accept the ceasefire. The Constitutional Court has ruled against the impeachments of 4 public officials, including the head of the nation's audit agency and the head of the Central District Prosecutor's Office here in capital Seoul. Now, these rulings come ahead of the much-anticipated verdict on the president's own political fate. Oh Seong has our top story.
The Constitutional Court dismissed the National Assembly's motion to impeach 4 state officials ahead of President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment verdict. The court on Thursday announced its decision not to uphold the dismissal of Chief State Auditor Choi Jae-hae on allegations he broke the neutrality of the Board of Audit and Inspection by acting in the interests of the Yoon administration and conducting a weak audit of the relocating of the presidential office in 2022. That move by President Yoon was criticised by his political opponents, who make up an overwhelming majority at the National Assembly. The judicial bench, however, cited a lack of evidence that Choi had acted illegally or unconstitutionally and asserted the independence of the auditing authority. The bench also ruled on the impeachment of 3 prosecutors, including Seoul Central District Chief Prosecutor Lee Chang-soo and prosecutors Cho Sang-won and Choi Jae-hoon, who have been accused of conducting a lenient investigation into First Lady Kim Gon-hee's alleged involvement in a stock manipulation case. The justices said it was difficult to conclude the prosecutors had violated the law or constitutional principles. The court has been working on 9 impeachment cases, 8 of which were pushed through by the Assembly after President Yoon's martial law on December 3rd last year. Yoon's legal team claimed Thursday's rulings confirmed the opposition abused its legislative power with a series of impeachments and called for the president's case to also be dismissed immediately. As political and public pressure continues to become more fervent by the day, particularly after his release from detention, the court appears to be moving more cautiously to deliver a broadly acceptable decision to a highly polarised society. More than 2.6 million petitions, both supporting and opposing Yoon's impeachment, have been filed to the court. With Yoon's impeachment ruling unlikely to take place this week as initially expected, this is set to become the longest impeachment trial for a South Korean leader, marking 91 days this coming Saturday. Former President Park Geun-hye's impeachment ruling took 91 days after the motion was passed, while Roh Moo-hyun's took 64 days.
They know that this is going to be in the history books, especially on Yoon's side. They will be scrutinizing it with a magnifying glass to find any fault possible. And so I think they really want to make sure that all the reasoning is absolutely watertight. I think they are really trying to do their utmost to avoid having a split judgment or even a minority judgment.
Observers also say the ruling on whether or not to uphold Prime Minister Han Duck-soo's impeachment is also likely to precede the presidential impeachment verdict, given that it is a strongly related matter that affects the nation's governance. In any case, a decision on Yoon's impeachment is widely expected before 2 justices retire from the bench on April 18th. Oh Seong, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, a fresh feud is taking shape at the Parliament over unilateral revisions to the Commercial Act by the opposition party to tackle the so-called Korea discount, a phenomenon that sees Korean stocks valued lower or assigned higher risk premiums than their global counterparts. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon explains.
In efforts to tackle the so-called Korea discount, the Democratic Party of Korea unilaterally on Thursday passed revisions to the Commercial Act. However, the ruling People Power Party has already warned that it will request acting President Choi Sang-mok to veto the bill. The revision aims to add the word shareholders to the wording for the duty of loyalty by directors, now saying perform their duties in good faith for the interest of the company and the shareholders. In addition to changing the wording, the revision aims to add it mandatory for listed companies to hold virtual shareholder meetings.
The essence of this statement is simple. South Korea is a democratic republic and must represent the interests of its people. Likewise, company directors must act faithfully for the company and its rightful owners, the shareholders. This is the core principle.
The PPP said this will lead to lawsuits and make it hard for companies to make decisions, saying small investors are not contractually bound to the companies, with different types of investors aiming for different results.
If passed, companies will be shackled with enormous restraints as they compete on the global stage. Instead of moving forward toward the world and the future through challenge and innovation, South Korean companies will be preoccupied with appeasing all shareholders, merely striving to maintain the status quo.
While the ruling PPP is looking to make sure this bill is not passed, the governor of the Financial Supervisory Service, Lee Bo-kyun, said he will put his job on the line to stop the acting president from vetoing it. He said the bill may have side effects, but vetoing would only bring the improving shareholders' values discussion back to square one. Considering the FSS governor is a President Yoon Suk-yeol appointee, this sends a strong message to the public. To this, the floor leader of PPP, Kwon Sung-dong, said the party has a consensus of rejecting the bill and that these actions were inappropriate considering that he is not even a cabinet member who has jurisdiction over this law. Meanwhile, the Federation of Korean Industries also released a statement requesting a veto, saying the revision comes with severe side effects and has aspects that are unconstitutional. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Preparations are well underway to protect Korean businesses, big and small, from potential disruptions in light of the 25% tariffs on steel and aluminium imports into the American market. Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun reports.
The South Korean government is ramping up efforts to counter the impact of the Trump administration's 25% tariffs on steel and aluminium imports, which took effect on Wednesday. Acting President Choi Sang-mok and Industry Minister An Dok-keun outlined measures on Thursday to mitigate the impact on domestic industries, particularly small and medium-sized businesses. At an economic meeting, Chair ordered ministries to prevent market imbalances from surplus steel and stressed the need for aggressive negotiations with Washington. To facilitate this, the Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency has designated a special task force to assist companies in navigating the new trade landscape. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy has pledged to support over 1,300 exporting firms with a total of 61.1 billion Korean won, roughly $42 million in export vouchers. This initiative allows SMEs to access services essential for overseas market expansion, including legal consulting and trade certifications. With the recent rise in global trade uncertainties, the government has increased the export voucher budget by 9% compared to last year. Minister An also convened a meeting with steel industry leaders at the POSCO Center in Seoul, where he reaffirmed the government's commitment to countering protectionist trade measures and pledged to announce a detailed support plan for domestic steel firms within the month. He highlighted plans to strengthen trade defense mechanisms, such as stricter monitoring of unfair imports and anti-dumping measures, in response to concerns about increased market competition from lower-cost steel producers in Southeast Asia. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, he emphasized that the government is working on a comprehensive response strategy, which includes diplomatic efforts through high-level talks with U.S. officials, with the country's Minister for Trade on a visit to Washington to do so. With trade negotiations ongoing, officials stress that both short-term financial aid and long-term structural adjustments will be crucial for the survival and competitiveness of Korean firms in the global market. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Acting President Choi Sang-mok has shared hopes to speak with U.S. President Donald Trump about tariffs and Korea's trade surplus with the U.S., which he believes is simply a temporary phenomenon. Speaking to the Wall Street Journal in an interview that was published this past Wednesday, Choi emphasized that the surplus is a result of Korean conglomerates, including Samsung Electronics and Hyundai Motor, expanding their direct investments into the U.S. He also spoke of Korea sharing its expertise in shipbuilding with the U.S. to assist the latter in strengthening its own naval industry. Ultimately, Choi maintained that the two countries can work towards a more balanced and mutually beneficial trade relationship. And U.S. President Donald Trump is challenging claims of inconsistency with regard to his tariff campaign, calling his approach thus far flexible, but pledging very little flexibility after reciprocal tariffs take effect in early April. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday stressed that April 2nd will be a very big day for the United States as his reciprocal tariffs go into effect. Trump slammed the previous administration for America's losses in trade, but said the U.S. will take back a lot of what was stolen from it by other countries. However, Trump also noted that he has shown flexibility on his tariff policy, rejecting claims that his policy implementation has been inconsistent, as seen through his on and off tariff impositions on Canada and Mexico. The U.S. leader also warned that once the tariffs go into effect, there will be very little flexibility. Meanwhile, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer said on Wednesday that the European Union's new retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. came too little, too late. According to Greer, the EU's latest tariff on U.S. imports completely disregards the national security imperatives of the United States, adding that the bloc's trade and economic policies are out of step with reality. The comments come as the EU announced it will respond to Trump's 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports by imposing its own tariffs on U.S. goods worth over $28 billion, set to take effect on April 13th. Canada also announced its own retaliatory tariffs on nearly $30 billion worth of U.S. imports after the 25% steel and aluminum tariffs went into effect on Wednesday. Canada says it will follow a dollar-by-dollar approach and impose 25% tariffs on U.S. imports, including steel, computers, and sports equipment. Meanwhile, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum says her country will wait until April 2nd to decide whether to respond to the steel and aluminum tariffs. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
On a more promising note, a joint venture between two seaports, one here in Busan and another in Barcelona, is proving to be a productive gateway for greater trade between South Korea and Europe. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin files this report from Spain.
Every available route is an opportunity for companies looking to ship their products across the globe. From here, at the port of Barcelona, located on the Mediterranean Sea, goods are shipped seamlessly across Spain as well as to major markets across Europe. And that's why it was chosen as a strategic location for the B2B, or Busan to Barcelona, logistics hub.
To provide Korean exporters into Europe and Spanish exporters into Korea services. In 23, traffic between Korea and Spain increased by 46%. In the first 2 months of this year, trade between Korea and Spain via the port of Barcelona, and also France, because we serve not only Spain but France, has increased by 43%.
The logistics hub was established in 2022 as a joint venture between the port of Busan, the largest port in South Korea, and the port of Barcelona, to boost trade between South Korea and Europe. For South Korean exports, the journey begins at the port of Busan. After undergoing customs clearance, cargo is packed into shipping containers and transported to a terminal for departure. And from the port of Busan, the containers are shipped via large carriers to the port of Barcelona, a journey that takes just over a month on average. Upon arrival, the cargo is distributed across Spain and to southern European countries like France and Italy, which, thanks to the port's strategic location, takes only 1 to 3 days. But before shipment, goods are stored in a bonded warehouse that allows custom duties to be deferred until dispatch. That's located in an area adjacent to Barcelona's container terminals.
The important for the exporting company doing business in overseas is securing very stable the storage facilities close to the port. More specifically, the container terminal, the storage and the handling fees almost 10 to 15% lower than in local market price.
The warehouse is also ADR certified, which is the European standard for handling hazardous materials. That means it features fire-resistant construction and advanced ventilation, which are crucial for Korean chemical exports. And chemical products are just one of the many high-demand exports to Europe.
The goods that come in the most are automotive parts, consumer goods, chemicals, and electronics. There is also robust demand for high-value cargo, such as electronic and chemical products.
The warehouse operator added that exports from Korea to Europe are expected to maintain an upward trajectory as companies continue to seek new business opportunities and stable trade routes. In 2024, a total of 368 standard-sized shipping containers, or TEUs, were received from the port of Busan, a whopping 110% increase from the previous year. This year, with U.S. tariff policies exacerbating supply chain disruptions, even more Korean companies are expected to turn to Europe.
I think the uncertainties in the global supply chain is now expected to increase this year, especially by the spread of the protectionism. So we provide a more stable and reliable warehouse facilities to exporting company in Barcelona. Because the Barcelona is very close to the southern France or Italy, or even the northern Africa.
And it's not just the location that makes this hub an ideal trade gateway amid uncertainties.
We are all experiencing both trade disruptions and transport disruptions. B2B is a service to Korean importers or exporters that they cannot find in other ports because they can have a direct contact with the port authority who has direct contacts with customs, with terminals, etc.
He added that his contact with port authorities means the efficiency of operations can be improved even further. As global supply chains face increasing disruptions, this logistics hub will continue to serve as a key gateway for Korean exports to Europe, ensuring stability amid growing geopolitical risks. Isujin, Arirang News, Barcelona.
Right, and in other news, efforts to ensure a 30-day truce between Ukraine and Russia continue, with U.S. officials now actively seeking interaction with their counterparts at the Kremlin. Our Park Gonu has the latest.
According to the White House press secretary on Wednesday, U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz spoke with his Russian counterpart to pursue ending the war and to strike a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. That marked the first discussion between senior security advisors from the U.S. and Russia, following an agreement on a 30-day ceasefire proposal made between the U.S. and Ukraine in Saudi Arabia the day before. Also on Wednesday, U.S. President Donald Trump expressed his hopes that Russia would accept the proposal.
It's up to Russia now, and hopefully we can get a ceasefire from Russia, and if we do, I think that would be 80% of the way to getting this horrible bloodbath.
Trump also warned that Russia could face sanctions if it doesn't accept the deal, but added he doesn't want that to happen as he wants peace. He also said officials would be in Russia for further talks, with the White House confirming that Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, is set to visit Moscow this week. A Kremlin spokesperson said on Wednesday that Moscow is waiting for detailed information from the U.S. before taking a stance on the peace deal. And following the deal between the U.S. and Ukraine, Russian President Vladimir Putin in military uniform visited the Kursk region on Wednesday for the first time since Ukraine invaded the Kursk region in August of last year. During the visit, Putin ordered the complete liberation of the Kursk region.
Our task in the near future is to completely defeat the enemy who has dug in on the territory of the Kursk region and is still conducting military operations here.
He also spoke about the need to consider creating a buffer zone inside Ukraine's Sumy region, which borders Kursk, to prevent any further incursions by Ukraine. Park Gonu, Arirang News.
On the entertainment front, K-pop boy band 17 clinched 4 trophies at the 39th Japan Gold Disc Awards on Wednesday, the most by any foreign artist this year. Among them, the group brings home the title of Best Asian Artist, which is based on the previous year's record and video sales. This is also the second straight year that 17 has secured this particular award. 17 also claimed Album of the Year this time around. And a Japanese translator has won a prestigious Japanese literary award for her translation of author Han Kang's novel, We Do Not Part. According to the Literature Translation Institute of Korea on this Thursday, translator and poet Mariko Saito was recently awarded the 76th Yomiuri Prize for Literature in Translation. Saito has translated quite a number of Nobel laureate Han Kang's books, including The White Book, and introduced over 30 other Korean literary works to Japanese readers.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In Pakistan's Balochistan province, a military operation took place to rescue hostages on a hijacked train, killing all 33 militants. But during a day-long standoff, 21 hostages and 4 security personnel also lost their lives. On Wednesday local time, the Pakistani military initiated a comprehensive rescue operation on a train that had been ambushed by militants from the separatist Baloch Liberation Army the day before. The Jafar Express, carrying over 440 passengers from Quetta to Peshawar, had been hijacked by the separatist BLA. The militants detonated explosives on the railway track and launched rockets at the train, forcing it to a halt before seizing control of the train and taking hundreds hostage. The BLA had been demanding the release of Baloch political prisoners. Defense ministers from 5 European nations convened in Paris on Wednesday local time to discuss bolstering regional security and defense cooperation in the aftermath of the Ukraine war. The meeting comes amid Washington's efforts to pursue a peace deal with Moscow. Defense ministers from the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, and Poland discussed strengthening European defense mechanisms and providing security assurances to Ukraine amidst ongoing geopolitical shifts. Ukrainian Defense Minister Rustem Umerov also participated. A key point of the discussions was the potential establishment of a European reassurance force aimed at deterring future aggression and ensuring Ukraine's sovereignty. The deliberations also addressed the proposed Rearm Europe plan, which seeks to mobilize up to 800 billion euros to boost Europe's defense infrastructure. Japan began the 11th release of contaminated water from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean on Wednesday. The operation is part of an ongoing process to manage and dispose of water used to cool the reactors following the 2011 disaster. The International Atomic Energy Agency has confirmed that the tritium concentration in the discharged water is below Japan's regulatory standards, aligning with international safety guidelines. Tokyo Electric Power Company recently announced plans for the 11th batch of wastewater discharge from March 12th to 17th. In London, climate activists have protested against Tesla, targeting the company's robots to highlight environmental concerns. On Wednesday local time, 2 activists in West London poured orange liquid latex over a life-sized humanoid robot at a Tesla store. Following political activities by Elon Musk, CEO of the carmaker, a number of Tesla outlets in the U.S. and parts of Europe have also faced protests recently. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
Along with fog and ultrafine dust, yellow dust came in through the northwesterly winds. This yellow dust gradually spread across the country, starting with the Seoul metropolitan area and the Chungcheongdo provinces. In particular, special attention should be paid to Incheon, Sejong, and the Chungcheongdo provinces, as a yellow dust crisis warning is at the attention stage. This yellow dust will peak today and will gradually clear off from tomorrow. Tomorrow, the daytime temperature in Seoul will be 18 degrees Celsius and 15 degrees on Saturday, about as warm as it would usually be a month from now. Seoul and Gyeongju will start off at 3 degrees, Busan at 7 degrees tomorrow morning. Highs will move up to 19 degrees in Daejeon, 21 degrees in Gwangju. On Saturday, it will start raining in the southern parts of the country and across the country on Sunday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session.